Good morning to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion, the first of two that we are going to do today, where we go over Tropical Storm Isaias. And that's how I'm going to stick with saying it. Isaias. I'm just going to kind of blend it together and call it Isaias. All right? So we do have a tropical storm now. The name is Isaias. And it's got a very uncertain future. And in some respects, that's good. And in some respects, that's obviously bad or negative, because we like more certainty in our lives, especially with everything else that's going on. We don't need more uncertainty. So let's take a look at what, and I did this yesterday, at what we do know, and then we can examine what we don't know. First of all, the wide shot of the Atlantic Basin, quite interesting today. Now, you have to admit that looking at Isaias this morning, it's definitely much more consolidated and tropical storm looking than it was yesterday. It's not rapidly developing, but it's definitely making progress. We also notice this little feature out here, very likely a short-lived tropical depression right off the coast of Africa. It is Invest 93L, if I'm not mistaken. Not going to do much. It's funny because it looks like it's just sitting there. That's amazing in July that this isn't just racing off to the west-northwest, but nevertheless, there it is. And then you've got this other enormous envelope of energy right here that's moving across with the Saharan air layer very firmly ingested into it. The Gulf of Mexico, nice and clear, as is the Northwest Caribbean. This region here is going to warm back up, water temperature-wise, from being disrupted by Hannah. And a couple of things to note. See this energy coming across here. There's some energy offshore. This will all help to impact what happens here with our tropical storm in the coming days. All right, so let's break it down. Take a close-up satellite view here. This is from the weathernerds.org site and a visible satellite shot. And you can see it's definitely more curled up than we've seen so far, more organized, got some banding showing up in there. And this is a really important satellite shot. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. The low-level center, at least to me, looks like it's right in here somewhere. Or, well, let me rephrase that. A center, more like the mid-levels. I think the low-level center is more down here somewhere, but that's probably going to die away, and the energy will transfer over to this mid-level rotation that we can clearly see in the satellite imagery, and it'll be on the north side of the Dominican Republic here and off to the races into the Atlantic, instead of the whole thing getting dragged over the spine of Hispaniola. And we can see this quite clearly on the radar here. This is out of San Juan. This is a really neat radar animation here by Mark Nissenbaum out of Florida State University. And the low-level center is probably over here somewhere, dying away. But clearly right there, that little swirl, that is what we call a mesovortex. That's energy, vorticity, rotation. And look, everything is heading towards that, not curling up here. So it is my assertion, looking at this, that over the next 6 to 12 hours, as this feature emerges back out into the Atlantic, that this will all consolidate, and in fact, it might even pull it a little bit more to the north, and this will be primarily over the Atlantic. Now, before that happens, you still have a few passing showers here, some of them heavy at times, near the Virgin Islands, all right? So you got to keep an eye on that, near Vieques over here. But then Puerto Rico, definitely in the heavy rain, very heavy rain band right here moving in just west of Ponce. So that's going to continue to be a problem as this southerly flow comes across Puerto Rico, going to dump a lot of rain and some of this mountainous terrain. There could be some serious flooding issues. We will check in with our good friend Carlos down there and see what he has to say about all of this. And hopefully everything will be good. I know that there was a lot of people without power yesterday already from this, so definitely already having impacts. But for you folks over here in the Virgin Islands, conditions will improve. I think that goes without saying, over the next 6 to 12 hours or so. All right? So I'm not the only one seeing this. Philippe here, and I still don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's either Papin or Papin, but he's very intelligent, and that's what matters. Talking about what I was discussing here, that this mesovortex that we can see on the San Juan radar is beginning to move outside of the radar range, unfortunately. But, he says, however, technically is what he says, this convective feature is still readily identifiable and accessible via the lightning data from the GOES-16 satellite, and that's it right there. So that's the feature that we can track on the radar that's leaving the radar range, but easily identifiable here on satellite. Quite fascinating. And the overall concentration of energy seems to be right in here. So the old low-level center is probably going to die away down here somewhere, with a new one forming as this heads off the coast back out into the extreme southwest Atlantic throughout the day today. So that's something we will be monitoring for sure. All right, what else do we know? Well, we know that the water temperatures are very, very warm. The upper ocean heat content is formidable all along the potential path here. I'm going to use the color white to highlight it. All along this potential path up through the Bahamas, and then something like this. We'll just kind of draw our own area of where it could track. Yes, plenty of warm water to work with, not only at the surface, but also several tens of meters deep. That is the upper ocean heat content that we talk about. The higher up on the scale that we go, the more of it there is. It's just more energy in the upper part of the ocean extending down from the surface. Very important to note that. So a look at the 12 UTC model guidance here, some of the different models. It just shockingly reminds me of Matthew, Dorian. I mean, we're in the era of these close calls for Florida and the Carolinas. It's just crazy how that's been these last several years, really from 2016 on. Irma, to some extent, you know, how close that came after barreling through the islands here, and then it scraped Cuba there, and you remember Irma did what it did. But every one of these is different, and this is what we're looking at right now. This is what do you want to call it? Like an amalgamation, that's the word, of lots of different models. Some of them are global models. I don't see any of the, like the HWRF or HMON. None of those models are in this particular. Well, there's the HMON interpolated. But the bottom line, if we look at like the TVCE, the orange one and the yellow one, that's generally running offshore of Florida over here, and then offshore of the Carolinas. So maybe this is just going to stay safely offshore, but close enough to get us all nervous, until up here, perhaps near Atlantic Canada. So stay tuned. Very uncertain times ahead still with the track, because the Euro, of course, takes it on over into this direction. We'll just have to see. This is going to be very frustrating for a lot of people because the uncertainty, right? And we want to know. You can tell it just got up a little while ago. We want to know what's going to happen with, more certainty, and it's just not there. This is interesting too, I guess certainly in a good way, that most of the intensity guidance is pretty level. And that's good. We're not seeing a big ramp up in all of the guidance like this one. This is, I believe, the Navy NavGem, as they call it, or NavGem, however you want to say it, interpolated, or the intensity version. So don't pay much attention to this, really. It's an outlier. That's why. I'm not trying to besmirch the Navy model, but it's an outlier. And the rest of the guidance for intensity keeps it at tropical storm strength, probably due to the shear, that potential vorticity streamer that Jack Sillen and I talked about the other day. Remember, there's just reasons, despite the warm water, why this might not strengthen very much. And part of that's climatology. It's still just late July. We're not in the thick of the hurricane season yet. That usually doesn't happen for another 2 weeks or so. But just real quick, to show you one of the hurricane-specific models, and hello again. This is the HWRF, the Hurricane Weather Research Forecast. It's been model. It's been a lot of money's been put into it over the years to try to improve it. And so we're going to look at what it was showing from the 6Z. 6Z is 2 a.m. Eastern Time. It's run from today, and this is the radar simulation and the mean sea level pressure. You can see it right there in the middle, just barely, I guess. And this is from Levi Cowan's website, the Tropical Tidbits website. And this gives us every 3 hours, okay? So it moves along. And so let's just go back to the beginning. So there's, well, it shows it at 3 hours out, so that's fine. So here, what is it? It's 10:30 Eastern now. And so this would have been 9 a.m. So this is right here, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. All right, so let's move it ahead 3 more, and this would be 11 a.m. So this is almost right now. And the HWRF, quote, thinks, end quote, right? And just as, air quotes there, that the center would be over Eastern Dominican Republic. And it's probably going to reform up here, to be honest with you. So this may be off just a little bit, just my interpretation. The original low-level center may die off over here, sure. But we saw what we saw with this and this, right? So that leads me to believe that this is already not exactly accurate. But we'll continue on, shall we? So here we are. Let's go on out to 24 hours. So this will be valid 2 a.m. Friday, and another 24 hours. It moves through the Bahamas. Not very well organized. Pressure's down in the low 990s. 2 days out, so this will be valid Saturday morning, 2 a.m. It's in the Bahamas, right near Grand Bahama. Moves up across close to Nassau and some of the areas where Dorian impacted last year. Actually, that's what is that? Andros down there, and this is Grand Bahama, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry. And then on up 72 hours. You notice it stays off the coast of Florida, so let's just clear that up quickly. And very similar to Dorian last year. By day 4, up here off the Carolina coast, trying to strengthen a little bit. And then it's right off of Wilmington at day 4 there, and then up into and across the eastern part of North Carolina, up along, and this is now out to day 5 into New England. So how likely is this to happen? And that's what we're talking about here. Scenarios, uncertainties, models. It can all start to get very unnerving because you look at this run and you go, oh my gosh, it's going to come right up the East Coast and it's going to affect millions of people. Well, that's just this one run of this one model at that one particular time. Everything changes every hour that we go through time. Where the storm is, how it's interpreted by the numeric models within the atmosphere itself, which is very complex. Other weather features that are coming along. As I talked about at the beginning with this satellite loop here, these features here, this energy offshore, this energy coming in from the Midwest, how will that erode this ridge over here? There's a lot of different things to take into consideration as we go through time. Does this system come along at some point and try to sneak in and maybe bust down this part of the ridge out here? There's just, I won't say an infinite amount of possibilities because that might be stretching it a bit, but there are a lot of possibilities. So what can we look at this in terms of good news? Well, the good news is, so far, there are no indications yet that this will rapidly intensify and become some powerful hurricane that brings everything to the table. All of the hazards would be bad. Wind, storm surge, flooding rain, the threat of tornadoes, downburst, all that kind of stuff. A well-developed hurricane like Dorian, like Michael, etc., okay, and Irma, those, yes, are the ones we all need to worry about, and they're very problematic because they bring all of the hazards with a lot of punch, right? These systems are less problematic overall, but they can still bring problems, because people will not worry about it so much because it's just a tropical storm that nobody can pronounce the name to. And but seriously, we have to just see, one day at a time. Don't worry about it too much yet in terms of major impacts. But just look at your situation. You say, okay, I'm in the Bahamas. It could come through here. What do I need to do? It's not that powerful. I don't have to worry about the wind too much. You can kind of X that off so far. But rain, maybe some higher waves, etc., squally weather, just think about it like that. What do I have to be concerned about? What are the hazards that are going to affect me? That's how you need to look at all of these. Instead of just the national headline, tropical storm coming, hurricane coming, what exactly does that mean for you? And that's all you need to do. You think about it in those terms and look at the guidance, look at the stuff from the National Hurricane Center, what I'm telling you, what your local television station meteorologist is telling you, and the people that you trust on social media. Everybody that's posting, that one snapshot of a certain scenario that shows the worst possible outcome, look at that as an anomaly. Okay, that could happen. But you could also walk across the street and a jet engine could detach from a plane and fall on your head and kill you. That's probably not going to happen, right? I mean, honestly, you don't walk around all day thinking like that a bus is going to run over you. But you do at least be aware, especially with the bus thing, the analogy there, you look both ways before you cross the street. And that's all we need to do here. Just be aware, and we'll see what happens. At least it's not that intense yet. Let's take what we can get. All right, like I said, this will be the first of 2 updates for today. The update this afternoon will be somewhere around 4:30 Eastern or so, and we'll take a look at what the Euro has to say. I might even make it after 5 p.m. Eastern so we can also take a look at the 5 p.m. advisory package from the National Hurricane Center. So let me just do that, come to think of it. We'll take a look at everything around 5 Eastern time, all right? As always, thank you for tuning in. I do appreciate it. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, and I'll talk to you again later this afternoon.